Voltaire and John Locke were the major Enlightenment philosophers during this political time period. Voltaire believed in the representation of the everyday citizen and protecting their rights. John Locke also says that there should be an agreement between citizens and its rulers, but at the same time, people get freedom. And Andrew Jackson, James K. Polk, and Martin Van Buren all support these philosophies. These values were portrayed during this time period by offices becoming more elective and there being wider suffrage. Instead of only white male adult citizens with land being able to vote, all white adult male citizens can now vote. The primary policies addressed within the United States during this time period were people's vote, which had a greater power because new political parties arose, such as the Whigs. The people had more of a say in the government, and more offices became elective. So, the people of the state voted on ideas rather than the state legislatures. Jacksonians did not like to give financial support for any social needs, such as poor people or the mentally disabled. During this era, the responsibility of women in society was challenged. Some women took a stand and began to work in politics. Some people considered it the Second Great Awakening when men and women began to dispute what was just and what was unjust, such as war, slavery, and the cruelty towards the mentally ill. Jacksonians had no interest in social reforms. They shunned the equal rights to women in society despite citizens' uprising concerns of the topic. There were many foreign relationships during this era, but the most significant relationship was with the Native Americans. Due to the fact that people in America were inhabiting their land in the East, this caused for there to be a lot of tension between Americans and Native Americans. In 1830, Britain and France were trying to keep one another from trading with the United States, but Jackson decided to give shipping rights only to the British West Indies and not the French. Since President Jackson cut off relations with France due to Napoleonic Wars, problems occurred between France and the United States up until 1836.
The major economic focuses of this political time period was the market revolution. The market revolution was when people moved from making their own food and providing for only themselves and their families into market agriculture. Slave economy spread due to the boom of cotton within the South. The products that were the main focus of the economy were transportation, cash crop agriculture, and capitalist manufacturing. The economy during this era was doing extremely well due to the increase and decrease of specific things such as transportation and bank use. Transportation was cheap, and people decided that they did not want to grow their own crops anymore, but they wanted to work. And this greater efficiency of agriculture caused for there to be a rise in urbanization and a strong working class. There was an extreme use of money during this time period, and this caused for more people to rely on banks during this era. The economy transformed during this time period, and the process of the market revolution affected law, politics, and society as a whole. There were many laws that were enforced during this time period. At first, only white men who owned land and were of a certain religion had the right to vote, and these qualifications were eliminated. Offices became elective, and the people's vote had greater power. Instead of the state legislators electing presidential electors, the states allowed voters within the state to decide. Another law that was enforced during this time period was that all Indians must live to an area west of the Mississippi, which was also known as the Indian Removal Act. The Tariff of 1832 was also created to protect local producers from foreign competitors by setting the tariff on imported goods or using some other method to reduce importation. There were many major events that occurred during this time period, such as the Indian Removal Act of 1830. Whites in America were extremely hungry for land, and they tried to push Native Americans out of their homeland in order to gain more land because more land equaled more power. The Creek Indians were a threat to a lot of white settlements, such as Louisiana and Alabama, and Jackson was determined to fight back. Jackson ended up exterminating almost every Creek Indian, and the leader, Chief Bill Weatherford, ended up sacrificing the 23 million acres of land that the Creek Nation at one point resided. When the Native Americans were pushed out of their lands in the east, they were pushed west of the Mississippi. They were forced to walk on the Trail of Tears in 1830, which was an official government policy. The Trail of Tears was when Cherokee Indians were forced to march 1,200 miles to reach their destination in present-day Oklahoma, and many people died from disease and starvation. More than any other city, New York exploded in size, nearly tripling from 202,589 to 515,547 in those 20 years. In the 1830s, nearly 600,000 immigrants came to the United States, primarily from Europe. In the 1840s, that number swelled to 1.7 million. There were many reasons for this growth, but one of the main reasons was that land was abundant and inexpensive, especially in the interior sections opened up by Jacksonian policies such as the Indian Removal Act. And the economy was generally booming, which not only created jobs, but a never-ending cycle of new industries. People saw the Indian Removal Act as the cure to land disputes, and it gave everyone what they truly wanted. Settlers would not be attacked by Indians, and Indians were able to pursue their lifestyles on their own land in the West. Slavery became more popular in the South due to the Indian Removal Act. America had more land, which meant that there was more room for slaves. Manifest destiny, or imperialism, was an idea that the United States was preordained by God to expand all throughout North America. Most settled in the South and had strong ideas about how whites had the divine right to acquire and dominate because they had the proper economic system and the most developed culture. They believed that this belonged to the most advanced race. Slave population grew by natural increase and migration, and the cotton industry also increased, and this caused for slavery expansion. Jackson and his party were seen as responsible for the expansion of slavery due to the South now being controlled by America. Plantation agriculture was in mind, which made slavery more popular. Some people blame Jackson for the further emergence of slavery within America, and after Jackson died, slavery caused sectional divides between the different parties. Another major event that took place was the first Democratic Convention, which was held on May 21st, 1832. This is when Democrats and Whigs were created, which were two different parties, and Whigs adopted their name because they rallied like the Whigs of the Revolutionary era. People got to vote for who they wanted to be their leader, and a lot of people finally got the chance to vote for different ideas instead of just one idea. Whigs believed more in the government supporting national banks, a protective tariff, and internal policies, and Democrats believed in completely different ideas. Democrats were more interested in economic reforms, but Whigs were more interested in social reforms such as the poor and criminals. Historians attach Jackson's name to the era because he symbolized the striking changes in politics, society, and the economy of the time period. Jackson was known as the man of the people, and due to this, there were more elective offices and greater electoral turnouts, which had a huge effect on him being elected as president. This era caused people to view President Andrew Jackson as the major key in giving people more of a say in government and who they wanted to be elected as President of the United States.